Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for March 22nd, 2024. I'm Benji Fisher moderating, and also here are Ralph Kohler sharing his screen, and he'll start off the discussion, and Simo Helston, Scott, and Thomas Howell. Go ahead, Ralph.
1 second. Just noticed the close and install. We have 3 options available. Apologies. Yeah, we currently let's start off with the one Scott brought up. It's issue number 3422333. It's enable disable view within view edit page, an issue we've discussed before in previous usability meeting, and the issue was reviewed and tested by the community, but Alex Pott left a message and he wrote, "I agree, this functionality seems useful, but I wonder if we have a problem with the fact it automatically applies all the other changes in this list that make immediate changes to the view go to the confirmation, for example, delete view. The other things in the list stage the change first, then you have to press save before making changes. I think immediately disabling or enabling the view from this action button breaks the expectation. As I don't see any discussion of this usability issue on this issue setting back to needs review."
Can you show us what the issue is
Yep.
about?
Yep, I just wanted to apply the patch, but somehow no, it's working. 1 second. Let's go into structure, views, patches already applied. If you go, for example, to the disabled, then you have the option to enable the view and save. And same for disable the view and save. And that immediate change and the error message is still taking place. But that's an unrelated problem.
You don't actually have to save the display before it becomes enabled. As soon as you click it, it actually enables.
Okay.
Saving the display would save the display that you're editing, but it has, so it has no connection to that.
Okay, so before this issue, if you want to enable or disable, you can't do it from this page. You have to go back to the overview page.
Yes.
Okay. And
where on the page it's a drop-down link, just a standard drop-down link, where it instantly enables and disables the view as well in that respect. But of course, it's a drop button. Well, no, sorry. They're both drop buttons in that respect. But over on the other page, of course, on the list page, it just triggers instantly. All of the functions do, right? Edit just goes to edit. Delete goes to a confirm page. So that's actually the same behavior. I think we're actually talking about the same behavior.
I agree. And there the glossary has.
I didn't realize this to say this before now.
Okay, so the existing functionality is what we're looking at now, and it has the same property that if you enable or disable, it happens immediately.
Yeah, and if you just or if you delete a view from the list page, you'll get a confirm form. So the dropdown is a mix of instant actions and modal actions. It is a mix of responses.
Right. And also the edit is one option there, and that just goes to a different page.
Yep. Yeah. It's a normal trigger, normal page trigger.
So what then is the expected behavior if we add this link when you're already editing the view? And I think Alex Pott was saying that it would not only enable or disable it, but also submit any changes on the form.
No, I don't think he meant to say that. Just that it was a different behavior, that all of the items on this have a form to go to, even in the first one, which is the editing the details of the title of the view. They trigger a modal in that respect. I think that's just what he saw.
Okay, so it's just a question of whether it's an immediate action or whether it goes through a confirmation form.
Yes.
Okay. Thomas?
To me, based on this observation that I'm observing, it sounds like Alex didn't compare the way, or compare and contrast the way we are right now. And so within the list, it's inconsistent, but if it's consistent between the existing behavior being mixed on the other page, I'm not sure I agree with Alex Pott's conclusion that this is problematic. Because you'd want to change it in both places if you were going to change it here.
So you're saying it's okay to be consistently inconsistent.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. It's better to be consistently inconsistent rather than to change the behaviors here. However, it is a valid point that within these lists, they behave in two different ways. I think traditionally what I know of other applications, when an action is destructive, such as like deleting something, those like things that have difficult to reverse effects, that's one of the motivators for having the modal. Whereas enable and disable doesn't necessarily have a destructive effect and is easily recovered from. And I would put that in quotes because it can be questionable. If you have a crazy view, you might blow your site up by enabling it. But in theory, enabling and disabling a view is something you can recover from in a way that if you delete a view, you cannot recover from.
Kristen Paul shares that sentiment in comment number 53, basically.
Right. And I was also thinking of that point that since it's easy to reverse, we don't really need a confirmation form for it. Any other thoughts? Scott, what's your opinion?
So yeah, no, I saw beyond. We didn't actually see that the consistency is the same, right? I'm happy with the functionality. My only other suggestion is that, and because in order to move it out of this, is to move the actual settings onto the edit name description modal. So you want to click on that. You can see that you'll edit the title, the description, and the view tag. And that would be the only other place to put a status change that is currently existing in an open modal and would support the wider operations of a view, the wider control of a view that aren't the specific displays.
I'm sorry, where are you suggesting putting this?
Click on the top item, edit view name description. So in here, this would be the only other place to actually put a status change for a view. Because the administrative tags, description, stuff like that, that aren't actually relevant to the view, only get seen on the views list page as that goes. But this is still a weird place for a user to try to figure out if the view was disabled, how can I re-enable a view? Which was sort of the original problem, that a view didn't have the ability to, like the view page, a user didn't have, if you got to a view from a context link, and the view was disabled, you'd have no idea that the view was disabled or where to go to re-enable a view. That was the original bulk of problems.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think I agree with you that this is sort of the only place to put it from a scope point of view, um, but it's not easily discoverable. So, yeah.
Thanks.
So do we have consensus that the consistent inconsistency is okay and we should move it back to RTBC? I get a thumbs up from Thomas and Ralph. Go ahead.
In regards of the consistency, I agree, but I wouldn't move it to RGBC because those errors still happen now also on the standard profile. Before I only experienced those with Umami, but I think that should be definitely fixed if possible before RGBC.
I think it's linked on the side of this ticket or with the standing ticket that there's other issues from a few years ago around this problem. It seems to be that the view that we're adding is a page that's disabled and it's trying to find a link to a disabled route.
Oh, okay.
It's complete. So please scroll up to the related issues here.
Ah, completely okay. 1 sec.
Yeah, these two related issues, the first two were the issues I could find that were around this in the first place.
Ah, okay. Those I've missed. Now then, RGBC is okay with me as well. Just wanted to note, not that it goes unnoticed and glossed over those errors, but if it's already
Seems to be, yeah, it
covered.
seems to be an exception on the route.
Okay.
I can't find anything about it, and I couldn't debug any more directly myself at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on this issue? Okay. And who wants to leave a comment on the issue? Scott, do you want to give a report on our discussion?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Yeah, and I'll ask if there are other issues. I know Ralph has at least one that he's prepared. Anyone else? So go ahead, Ralph. What's this one?
Okay, the next one is issue number 2845144. User can't reference unpublished content even when they have access to it. 1 second, I just have to open in a separate window. Problem is the following. Steps to reproduce in the issue were the following. You have to create 2 content types. Content type A, if you go under edit and publishing options, default option published is unticked. Then option content type B, if you go into edit, that one is published. You have to create an additional entity reference field referencing content type A. Choose autocomplete widget in form display. Autocomplete is selected. Then you have to create just 1 second.
A published node and an unpublished node of type A.
Have to create a user called test. That created user edit I've set to content editor, and the permissions that are needed is to view own unpublished content and to create content type A and B and to edit your own content type A and B, and then log in as a user. I've already created content type A. called a test, which is unpublished, as you can see. And if I try now to create a node of content type B, it is, and try to reference a test, it's not found. If you save, there are no content items matching a test. Same for if I go one step further, I just have to look up the ID again. 21, parentheses, 21, try to save again. You get this entity node 21 cannot be referenced. 1 second, now I'll add the patch again.
Well, while you're adding the patch, let me just mention that I don't think entering the node ID in parentheses manually works. And it's a frequent annoyance for me on Drupal.org issues, which is, of course, Drupal 7. But I know the node ID of the issue that I'm adding as a related or parent or whatever issue. And I can paste that into the lookup field, but then it takes several seconds for it to do the lookup. And I kind of wish there were an easier way, if you already know the ID, to just enter it.
Second. I think, where was the setting? I suppose. Yeah, there's the create referenced entities if they don't already. No, that was the setting underneath. Include unpublished entities the user has access to view is the label they're going with right now.
This is with the patch. That's
Yeah.
the new option we're getting.
Yep. Just create a new one. It is. Yeah, and now already, if I type just A, I get preview, save, and it works. So
And then
I
if you were
think,
to view this page as an anonymous user, you presumably would not be able to see.
yeah, 1 second, I go to content. Yeah, that is one of the details I consider problematic. As you can see, B got published, the status, while A is still unpublished. And if you go onto that, it still references A, which is still unpublished. And there's no note about the fact either on when you're adding basically that node as a reference. It's same as when you publish your node of content type B.
But could you visit the B page as an anonymous user?
Yeah, 1 second. I open a new one. Yeah, there the reference isn't shown.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, an important context is missing that way. Because the reference is set for a reason.
Uh-huh. So first, any questions? Anyone need clarification about what the problem is and what the solution is? Okay, any comments on whether it's a good solution, whether this is expected or unexpected behavior?
It seems like it's fine. Right? go in, want to reference a piece of content. It creates it. It's creating it. Sorry, is that the same? I guess I'm confused about which ticket. It's that it doesn't have access to it, or that it created the unpublished content as well.
It was not creating the content. Ralph briefly checked that off on the configuration form, but then remembered that it was the other checkbox that he wanted to look at.
Okay.
Is this only a problem for the autocomplete field if you have a different form widget? Do you already Can you already add unpublished content?
I am not sure.
Right. Yes.
Will I test?
Yeah, let's just change the form display.
For content type B.
Uh-huh.
Change to what?
Oh, good question. Say checkboxes.
Okay. Let's create a new one.
Yeah, and it shows up. So I assume that the new option only affects the autocomplete widget. So it looks like we already have the option to reference unpublished content.
1 second. Just do that. Or shall I just ignore the patch again and that we are able to compare again?
Yeah, that would be
okay.
a good test. It'll take a few seconds, but while you're doing that, we can let Thomas say what he wants to say.
I'm wondering if the issue is how autocomplete knows what nodes it can access. It's possible that the autocomplete widget just normally doesn't have access to search through unpublished nodes, and that's why it doesn't make it visible. So it might be, couldn't it be a technical bug within the expected behavior for autocomplete? Because I'm imagining a website that could have hundreds of temporary articles that get created, and maybe you batch unpublish a bunch of them. And I'm just wondering if how they built autocomplete just automatically filters out everything that's unpublished, assuming that you don't want to search through it. And could we test that in some way?
Yeah, and then why should autocomplete be different from the other form widgets?
I'm not arguing for which behavior is right. I don't know. Like I can see, like, I don't know why anyone in their right mind with any significant amount of content would want to use radio buttons for reference.
Problem with the Ajax, right? The Ajax feature is kind of weird. And when it's adding in the node ID, that's the thing that confuses people too, right? Like it automatically throws in a node ID instead of a title, and then people don't even know why the node ID is there. But that's the current problem, right? I think it's published too. I guess we'd have to took it. I haven't looked at the patch. That would be funny. Would an autocomplete field remove an unpublished node in a workflow situation if it was suddenly unpublished in a referenced field and it was autocomplete?
Wouldn't.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you mean.
Is autocomplete not referencing unpublished nodes because they would get removed if somebody edited the page? Right? Or if this was a multi-field, does this show multiple fields, or is this isn't a comma separated list, right? If it's a multi-field?
I think this is configured to have just one value. That's why we had radio buttons rather than checkboxes.
Should look at a multi-field setting too, just in case.
That is strange right now. I've reverted the patch, but it's still shown.
Clear caches.
I have cleared the cache.
And you've reverted the patch and it's still showing.
Yep.
Hmm. Hmm.
Only the patch for Scott's issue is applied. The others got ignored. I've cleared caches now for the third time. And as you can see, oops.
Are you
As you can
sure that
see, if I go in here onto reference, edit, the checkbox got removed. Reference is autocomplete, but if I go in here on the B, test, A, autocompletion works. No idea why. I reapply. Clear the cache. Reload. Yeah, checkbox is here again. I can quickly do the share. I forgot also provide a link. Test or admin.
All right. I'm not sure why it's behaving that way. Maybe it's a bug. But what do we think? Should we just change it?
Are you testing as user one? Sorry.
None of those is user one. Oh, wait 1 second. Oh, yeah. Our color is user one. 1 second. I sign out. Login again. Admin.
You're confusing me, Ralph. Admin is user 2?
I have a script for setting up sites, and there I have the site install running with rcolor as the initial user.
In the old code, in the original code, the user is looking for if a user has access to bypass node access. And the new work is just changing how it gets the condition. So as an editor, you'd have bypass node access and be able to see all nodes.
Okay, so the question I want to ask is this. Should we just unconditionally change it and show any node that the user has access to? I think the argument for that is that it would make it consistent with the other form widgets. Or should we provide this option the way the current patch works? And if we do provide this option for the autocomplete widget, maybe we should also provide for the other widgets. Thomas, go ahead.
To me, this would the patch seems to break my expectations because someone could create a relationship between A and B, and they are both published today. It saves them in their current state with that relationship. And then if one of those became unpublished later, you would no longer have access to recreate that same relationship. So I would expect that if you wanted to break the rule, that would be a contrib type module. I'm not saying that there's not a reason to do it because of how much content could be there, but I would respect the fact that the way node save works and how you save the configuration of each node when you hit save, that it shouldn't care if something is published or unpublished in the default behavior. Simply because like you don't, something that always bothers me is if I edit a node down the line. So if A is unpublished, as A and B are published, or A is published, I create B, I create a relationship with A, I save B, so both are published, both are saved in existing nodes. Then A is unpublished. If I go back to edit B, if the behavior is to exclude unpublished things, it means that I can't get back to the state the moment I press edit. So maybe I want to keep that because I have a complex workflow where things may come in and out of being published. So looks like there's lots of comments. I'm going to stop talking.
Yes, Ralph?
No, Simo was first.
Okay, Simo. Simo, you're not muted, but I don't hear anything.
Try without. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so I removed the headphones. Might be something wrong here. So I was. You probably didn't hear my other comments before that. I was thinking that it should have the same default behavior than the others, and I'm thinking that if there is a patch, what like how does that patch kind of compare to just creating an entity reference view and using that? So if we want to use something else than the default that should be same for all widgets, I think what is the reason not to use entity reference view, but to have an additional option for something that is maybe not so common or is common. So I think, yeah. So I think this might be something that could be more of contrib module than, and basic thing would be to have same default for everything and then using entity reference views for custom cases. So kind of then this introduces a third option.
Yeah, in fact, there's a close relationship because one of the options is to use a view to select things as a form widget. So certainly if you choose that option, you have the ability to choose a view that does or does not filter on unpublished. Go ahead, Ralph.
I'm not sure Thomas's points were made basically that's about both cases are published and then at a later point being unpublished, but the case here that is added is basically to make at the moment unpublished entities available to a second one that is in the process of being published to reference it. And that's a slightly different case then. But yeah, still, I'm not sure. For me personally, as I already said, it's confusing. And also from a, how was it called? From a reference perspective, for a referential integrity perspective, it's problematic. But still, as a user, you never have the context that, for example, A is actually unpublished, that you are unaware of. As the person who set up the content type, you know that, but if you have separate editors then doing the actual work, the editorial work, then those not necessarily know that the node they are referencing is actually not published yet. And that could have consequences from an editorial perspective. And yeah, again, also if at a later point, the publishing state is changed, yeah, it's problematic.
Right, and so other situations that should be considered, say we have what is it? We have a B content type that references several A's, and then later some of those are unpublished, and then someone goes to edit the B. Simo, can you cut your audio? Someone goes to edit the B, and then suddenly those things aren't referenced. What if that content editor then saves the page? Do the references get removed? Probably. This is sort of a complicated situation. And Ralph brings up a related issue in the Slack. This is 2723323. What is that?
It's about deleted entities. So basically about referential integrity.
Uh-huh. when that's talking about actually deleting nodes rather than just unpublishing them. And
Yeah, but from a editorial perspective, it's similar. It's not directly identical, but still the front-facing article or node a visitor reads is still affected by that. It's related, but not identical.
right. So go ahead, Thomas.
I think to succinctly sum up what I believe, I think that any node should be able to have a relationship if the correct criteria are met with any other node, regardless of publishing state or any other state. So what matters is, does the author of the node have access rights to access the other node? So what matters is just respecting any strict permissions, but visibility is not a strict permission. That's something like, if it's not visible, then we should decide at time of display not to show something. And I don't know how to, I'm trying to be really succinct, but I'm thinking of a science journal. If I had a science journal that had a website that was a science journal, and I had a biology content type and I had a physics content type, and I wanted to reference an article that was in the process of being written, but not yet published, I could see that being a valid use case for a citation.
Sure, add the link now, and when it gets published, it'll be available to anyone.
Correct. And so in my mind, the concept of having any two nodes having a relationship, that has nothing to do with visibility. Visibility should then say, hey, can I see this thing? And I get that it's a problem if the way it's saving it is like, it may make things more complex at the display, like when it's going to the display stage. But I think the relationship doesn't care about a single, because then the question becomes, well, what happens if I wanted to have another field that blocked access? Because published, unpublished is just a special use case field. It's something that's kind of baked into Drupal by default on nodes, but it doesn't do anything different than if I were to put any other binary or categorical field that I wanted to use as a control. And that shouldn't have anything to do with relationships, unless, as we pointed out, like you did a great job, then you use the view widget, and you use that to then use these, like, that's a great place where you would say, okay, hide or show, publish. Like, you can choose, you can make more robust choices in that use case, but I wouldn't want to bake it in to allow or disallow. I would just ask, do you have permissions? That's important. I don't want to bypass any security implications. Those need to be baked in, but non-security issues like publishing, to me, that's more amorphous, and you need to handle it at the display stage.
I think I disagree with that, and just as a matter of security, it's the responsibility of the person building the site to make sure that access works. So, and it's also the privilege of the person building the site to grant or deny access. So if content editors don't have permission to view any unpublished content, then they will not see it on the node edit form, and that's a security issue, that they should not be able to see it on the edit form. Otherwise, it's an information disclosure vulnerability. So it is complicated, but I think we can't make the decisions for the site builders. Go ahead.
I mean, I think we are making that decision regardless. The moment you say they can or they can't see those things, you're making the security disclosure statement around published versus unpublished. if there isn't a security disclosure around that, then you are making that decision for people as well.
And
Like
but
that.
the security is determined by access control, and if the site builder doesn't give content editors permission to view unpublished content, then we have to respect that, and we have to not show it to them on the node edit page for another content type.
But yeah, yes, we disagree.
Okay, Ralph.
I liked Thomas's point in regards of if the correct criteria is met, no matter of the publishing state, provide the ability to set or define relationships. But I think maybe the easiest way would be at least on if the person who is writing the post or the creating the node that is referencing, for example, content type A, at least on save, get some sort of heads up, a confirmation step or something alike to inform, hey, 3 out of 10 of the references you made in your posting are not published yet. So the person is aware of that fact. That, from my perspective, would make sense.
I think that's a reasonable thing to do. I think it's out of scope for the current issue. And I'm not sure it should be in core. It's worth discussing. Scott, go ahead.
I'm actually looking at the patch for the access permissions that it's using. It still gives kind of a dangerous permission in this patch because it's now allowing the user to view any published node. And in different projects, you may have different content editors who should not have access to different node types under any circumstance. This now gives them permission for every content type regardless.
Oh, are there permissions in core to view
I just put the link
with the granularity of content type?
Yeah. Yes. The routine also has a special condition for user 0. So should user 0 have access to a reference field, which is, of course, a huge use case. I think it's blocking user 0 as it goes overall, but it's looking up the permissions of view any published content, which is any content type.
You know, I'm looking at the permissions for the article content type, and there's a permission to view revisions, but all the others are edit, create, delete.
The revision's a good point too. What if somebody reverts them?
Yeah, revisions are special, but I don't think there's a permission in Drupal core to view basic pages as opposed to permission to view any content.
Depend on the circumstance of what permission was being checked for, yes.
Say again?
Depend on the circumstance that they were looking at, which permission they were actually favoring in another. Yeah, we're kind of getting off on the where it's getting rendered to.
Okay, go ahead, Thomas.
One thing that I wanted to highlight was an experience I had years ago. So I don't know how valid this is to the current state or the patch, but it describes the concern I have. Is I have had an instance in the past where content would be created and saved. So you have a content type A, you create it and save it, and later on you go back to edit it. And unbeknownst to the user when they saved it, because something had changed elsewhere, so something became unpublished, it would either A, not allow you to save the node any longer, or B, it would force a content change unbeknownst to the editor. So something would change in state and you'd go to edit and save a node and it'd forcibly change the content. So if it became unpublished, when you went to resave it, it's permanently removed from that state without a warning or anything like that. And that type of forced content change is the thing I want to make certain to highlight as a risk. And that's because if users know to allow that change, that's one thing. But if it's unbeknownst to the user that when they change this, they can no longer save the node without changing what they've got, it's very important to avoid those situations because that makes permanent changes to the database. And so whatever records are there are no longer the way they were prior. Even if I intended to change just the body, but it changed the body and the reference field at the same time when I saved. And I did not know.
So if you're a content editor and there are existing references that you don't have access to, they don't show up on the reference field, and then when you save the node, those references get deleted.
Right. And I think it gets really complex when you've got different types of editors editing the same content. So like, I always thought of it as like the like chief editor permission can edit every node and sub editors can't. And then it goes back and forth and then content gets removed and added depending on the permission of the person who's editing that particular content piece.
Yeah, and that's the sort of thing I was thinking about when I said earlier that it is complicated and we have to respect the decisions made by the site builder, and the site builder has to be aware of the implications of the permissions that get granted. We have about 5 minutes left. We need to wrap up this discussion. So does anyone have a suggestion as to what we have agreed on? I'm afraid I'm not aware of any consensus on anything. So I guess let's try to narrow it down a little bit. One option is to take the patch as is, so it adds this new configuration option to the autocomplete widget. Another option, which I suggested, is that we unconditionally change the behavior of the autocomplete widget to make it consistent with the other widgets. In other words, always give the behavior as if this new option were checked. And of course, we have the option of not doing anything, that it's better the way it is than it is with the change. So opinions on those three options? Go ahead, Ralph.
I basically would lean towards your suggestion, Benji, but I'm not sure if possible. But in that autocomplete, I would still also like to have a label of basically unpublished at the end, that it's directly visible to the person editing which reference is published and which is not.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. I'm not sure whether that's in scope for the current issue, but maybe it is. Scott?
I think the label should be clear that this means that the user would have the permission to view any unpublished content. I think that needs to be clearer in the label.
You mean in that label?
Yes. It just says user has access to view, but it should be something like view all unpublished content, because that is actually the permission that it's now setting, and that will help to clarify where that ability is.
Or we could insist that that the merge request be updated so that it does what the label says it does. Yeah, I think checking the view unpublished content is incorrect behavior. Although I wonder what the other form widgets do, which permission they're checking. But yeah, certainly the label and the code should be consistent. It should do what the interface text says. But Scott, are you saying that you think we should make it an option and rather than always change it?
Yeah, because it's per content type, and there's content types where they may want to limit that scope. Actual project scope may want that limited on some content types.
Okay.
Otherwise, we could switch the autocomplete to a view all the time and just use views all the time.
That's a good point.
I don't actually suggest using views all the time, of course. Thanks.
It is a few extra steps for the site builder to set it up, and it does clutter up your list of views. All right, so I guess Ralph and I are leaning towards making it consistent with the checkboxes radio button widget. Scott, I guess, prefers the current approach, but make sure that it's doing what it says it's doing. And yeah, Scott also brings up the point that if you do need an option that is not provided by this form widget, that you have the option of selecting by a view, which gives you lots and lots of options. Simo, Thomas?
I tend to come on the side of Scott. I think that in spirit of what you were saying around respecting the site builder's desires for what is to be accessed and not, I feel that views are the time they deliberately build something. To me, this feels like it's a shortcut, and it's harder for people to know exactly what it's doing in the back end. So breaking rules is more dangerous when you don't know what it's doing. But this lowers the barrier to entry for people having access. So I'm on the fence. I tend to think the views widget is the right way to create this, to address this need. But I'm on the fence. Thank you.
Okay, so we are at the end of the hour and we don't have consensus. I think we should end the discussion for now. Think about it some more, try to come up with some good arguments for one or the other. It's a little disappointing, frustrating, but that's where we are.
Thanks, Benji.
Thanks all for coming. Hopefully we can figure this out, and I'll be back next week. Hope you can make it.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Try Camp.
Thank you.